Okay, so I'm taking a really big chance going live while my birds are at their noisiest part of the day. They're in a cage with their treats, so hopefully they're nice for me while I do a little live stream about this piece. I've had some questions about how I draw the fabric area right here. And how I make this white fabric look like fabric. The lighting changes the color. Right now it's pretty washed out because I've got bright lights on it. But actually I'm coloring every piece of the fabric in here. It's not just white paper showing through. Although it's kind of washed out right now, depending on the lighting, it looks more of a gray tone. I'm not using a lot of white. Well, actually, I'm using white. I'm using multiple colors for the blouse. So I am going to be using, it looks white, but it's really not. And whenever I start putting all of the pieces together, when I start finishing it off, it'll look white compared to the grass and everything else, but it's not as white as you think it is. I'm using, let me see if I've got all my colors here. I'm going to be using this sky blue. I'm going to be using this color you can't get anymore. This is a light violet. You can't get this from Faber-Castell anymore. They've discontinued this pencil, and I happen to have a nice stock of them, so I'm hoarding them and trying to use them carefully, but I'll be using that color as well. I'm also going to be using a Pablo pencil. This is the only pencil that I use for this drawing or my other 17 drawing that is not a polychromos pencil. I'm going to be using white, and then I'm going to be using a cold gray one. Oh, I set my pencils down across the room. Let me grab them. Oops. So I'm using a cold gray one, and there, I'm back, sorry. I'll also be using a light magenta, very lightly, if at all. And because this is sheer fabric, I'm also going to be using some of the lemon fruit colors for the background of the white area. So I'm going to start with, it looks like you would think, I'm just going to kind of work on this little area here. I haven't done the fruits here, but I'm going to kind of just show you what I do. I get a piece of glassine paper. So I'm going to hold the glassine paper over it, rest my hand on it so I don't touch the paper. And then I'm going to use a cold gray one. Now, I don't know, depending on the light, it's pretty washed out looking at my camera. Hi there. It's a little bit washed out right now, so I can tell that it's brighter and more light. You don't see the contrast, the saturation quite like I do, so hopefully you'll be able to see what's happening. But I can't see the text, so if you guys join and say hello, I will see it after, but I have to lean forward and I won't be able to see my phone screen anymore. So this part of the blouse, I want it to look like fabric, and this right now is just white paper. It's a little, hopefully my birds don't start screaming. They're really noisy, and I've given them some treats to try to make them be quiet while I demonstrate this. So I dusted it off with a dusting brush just to make sure it's all clean, because this is definitely an area that I want to control the little bits of color. I don't want the wrong colors to be on there. I'm using a battery operated eraser, and I'm just sanding it off with a sandboard just to make sure I don't have anything on the tip of my eraser. And I just see a little dot, and I don't want that dot there. I just picked it up. It's probably from the green or something. So now I have a white area to work on. And I'm going to start with my cold gray one. And I'm looking basically at my reference photo, and I'm just kind of putting the cold gray one where I see it. If it needs to be a little darker, in some places I'll press a little harder. And in some places it'll be really light. And so I'm trying to get the same value that I see on my reference photo. And I'm just using what I call a brush stroke. So I'm just real lightly putting this gray on. It's a little too gray, and that's all right, we'll fix it with other colors. And I'm really, how I know where to put it, I'm looking at my reference photo and I'm trying to copy the values. So I know that it needs to be a little darker in this area here. So I'm gonna color it a little darker with the cold gray one. I'm gonna sneeze, you guys. I'm sorry. Okay, so I've got these on here. That's something with live stream, you can't cut that out. It is what it is. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the gray down. But now it's a little bit too gray, but you can start to see how it has a little different value than the white paper here. So that's good. But it's a little too gray and it just looks kind of dirty. I don't want that dirty look. So I'm going to pull in a couple of other colors to get rid of that dirty look. And it depends on the reference as to which one of these blues I use. I've got a sky blue, and I have a sky blue, and then I have a light ultramarine, not used as frequently because it's pretty dark. And then I have a Pablo bluish pale. So I'm going to start with the sky blue and the bluish pale. And what I'm going to do is, if it has, you can see clearly two different colors of blue here. Hold them closer. One has more of like a powder blue kind of color, light blue, and then the other one is more like a sky color blue. So I'm looking at my reference photo and I see that this color is more right in this area. So I'm just kind of real lightly going on top of that cold gray and putting it down, just because I see that tone there. And then as I lay it down, I'm using my oval strokes just to lay it. Now the white parts of the fabric goes really quickly because there's not a lot of coverage, there's not a lot of layering to do. I'm just placing this blue where I see it. And then on top of the gray, that looked a little too dirty looking that way, so I'm just going right on top of it and creating more of a blue tone gray to it, that shadow of the fabric. Because really all you're drawing, this fabric is white. It would be white if it weren't for all the shadows. So now I see this color also coming in right here, and it's just, it's what you really have to do is look very closely at everything, at your reference photo, and ask yourself what needs to change, what colors need to be, where is it darker, where is it lighter, where is that shadow going, and I'm just copying it like I see it. Now this kind of has a shape, so I'm gonna follow that shape. It comes almost down to here. And then right around the edge of that orange. Now I don't have the lemon. I don't know if these are lemons or oranges. I think they're lemons, but they're orange. So, you know, just to make sure I don't go over this area, I'm gonna kind of lay out the lemon that I already kind of laid out a sketch of. And I'm just gonna put this down here so we know where not to go, but I'm gonna still work on the fabric for a minute. And I'll make this darker in a minute and do the right colors. But just kind of lay it there for now so you can see. I don't know if you can see it because it's so washed out. Okay, and then I'm going to, under this orangey part of the lemon, there is a reflection on the fabric, and it's really not a reflection. What it is that this lemon, these fruit that are on the shirt, on the fabric, there are some areas of the fabric where it is very sheer and see-through, and so what's happening is I am having to capture what's underneath the fabric. So while you see this here, because it's solid, you know, on top, the print of the fabric, but there's some reflection in the fabric under here. So it's not reflection. I don't know if it's, actually I keep saying it's reflection. It is see-through fabric. So I'm gonna take a darker color. I'm gonna take a light cadmium red, because that's the color tone that I see in the reference photo. And I'm gonna make the lightest touch possible. I mean, just very, very, very lightly putting it next to this. Because what there is there's a piece of fruit under this top sheer fabric, and it's showing through because this is a very sheer fabric. And I want this fabric to look sheer, so I'm catching every little color. But I'm doing it like as light as I can possibly touch it, just very carefully, okay? And then I'm gonna go back with this color of blue because I see it there, and fill that in next to the fruit. So I've been getting requests on how do you make the white fabric? How does it look white, and what do you do? Because, you know, the first thought is it's white fabric, I'm just gonna color it white, but you're not gonna color it white, you're gonna color it a lot of different colors, all the colors in the shadow and the reflection. So now I'm gonna kind of come down here because I know that's where the seam kind of goes. And there is a darker shadow for the seam. And then in here, in between the fruit, it's this color as well. So I'm laying some of this blue down. And then some of the areas of the fabric, I will see even more than the blue. I see like a lavender or kind of a violet color. And you really have to kind of step back and look and think about what colors you're seeing, because I'm starting to see the light violet. I'm sorry you can't get this pencil anymore by Faber-Castell. They discontinued it. I don't know why. I love this color. But I'm adding it on. You could use some purple violet or just different colors of violet to make a very light, but it's already light, which is why I love it. I'm going to go ahead and put it on top here to try to match that value and color tones that I see. There's a little wrinkle or something right here, so I'm going to add that. And then as I move along, I start to see that there's actually some of this color here too, just not as dark. It's super light. And then, yeah, just kind of building it up till I see the values are accurate. And then there's some yellow showing through the fabric. Right here, there's some yellow showing through the fabric. So it's super light, and I'm using like a cadmium yellow, light cadmium yellow. And I'm just barely touching it, because that's the sheer part of it is it's gonna look sheer. And now I'm going back to my cold gray, and I'm gonna darken up that seam that I see in the reference. Kind of goes down like this. And then it gets darker here. And lightly, okay, so once you've done that, once I've got my grays and my blues kind of in place, I need to continue, of course, and I would normally do my fruit first, complete the fruit. I'll finish one piece of fruit here real quick because it's pretty fast. Oops, sorry for shaking the camera. So just kind of lay in my fruit colors I see. And then, okay, I won't finish this outside because it'll take me too long. It's very detailed and I spend some time on that. But I'll just lay in the outline of it that I want. Okay, so just gonna lay in the outline and then I'll finish filling that in a minute. So the next step is to take a white, and I hope that this is good enough and you guys can see what I'm doing because it's so washed out. It's actually much darker. And I use the white and I just go right on top of all the gray that I did. This helps me a little bit desaturate those shadows so that they're there, but they're not, they don't look gray. It just looks like a shadow. And then it also helps me fill in any space that did not have anything on it. I want it to be covered with white. I don't want the paper. Sometimes you have to look at an angle on the side to see if you can make sure the paper is being covered. All the areas of the paper are covered with pencil. And a white is a very light, fast pencil. It'll just kind of seal. It feels like you're kind of sealing it all down. And I try to go the same direction with the pencil so it's not real noticeable when you look off of it later that it's going the different direction. Then I just go over all the blue areas, blue or gray, with white. Fill that in. And it kind of desaturates it a little and blends it, smooths it down, makes it look really, and I can press kind of harder with this because this is a white. Can't really hurt it. I mean, you can hurt your paper, so you got to gauge that. Make sure you're not pressing too hard for your paper. You're not making holes in your paper, but it's kind of softening it, blending it, getting rid of any pencil lines that I might have seen there with that light sheer fabric. And then there, that whole area of the fabric is already done, except for possibly some darker color seams. I see that this little seam here needs to be a little darker here and darker as it goes down here. And then obviously when you go back in and you start putting the seam with the gray on the outside, like this, it'll start to look more like a shadowed fabric on top. And then of course there's the green background next to that, and it'll start to pop when you put in the green. I'm just gonna put in a little bit of, it's really black in here, but I'm gonna do an underlying green area next to this sleeve. And I'm just going to kind of draw it as I go here. Fill that in with green, because I want some green under my black. It's not have to be perfect. I'm just getting the color laid down. And then I'll go back over it with the black, because it's really dark in that area. It's like a shadow, but there's also some little bits of green showing through. So I'm gonna get a couple of darker greens and fill that in. So I'll just kind of take an olive green, put a couple of dark areas that I'm gonna not cover black. So I have it. And then whenever I put my black on top of it, okay, so I was all prepared to draw with those lemon colors and light colors and didn't have my black ready. So then just go on top of it with the black. And now when I go up against that sleeve, and kind of line it in here, it's gonna look really like fabric. And then I have to kind of fill this in. Get my sharper pencil. It's really just like a puzzle. It's like you're just going through this whole puzzle. Instead of putting puzzle pieces together, I'm creating the puzzle pieces with pencil. So if you think of it that way, it's kind of like just building a puzzle. And then color that in. It's black because it's very dark shadow kind of between her and her arm where it's laying covering the grass, but I do see some light areas of grass, so I'm leaving those right there. Okay, so just kind of color that in nice and smooth. You have to sometimes go really careful with a sharp point along the edge of it. And then once you get the black in there for that shading, you can go right back on top of it with a little bit of green. So if it's too dark, too light. Okay, so that right there kind of capped off that sleeve. So once the fruit gets in, and then you start pulling it all the way around, you'll start seeing the, I see little polka dots. The thing with the white thing, the thing with white blouses or white clothing is you have to be really careful, because you get, when you're working up here, sometimes little pieces of pencil will drop, and you have to, that's why I use the battery operated eraser for those little tiny specks, because I don't want my pretty blouse to be contaminated with the little pieces of pencil. So then whenever you go back with the finishing off the fruit and the green, it's pretty easy to start seeing that fabric kind of pop. It's the fastest part of the entire drawing is really the fabric. These little oranges, I mean lemon slices. I think they're lemon slices, but there's a lot of orange in them. So they could be orange, but I think they're lemons. It just made them very orange on the fabric print. And it's a combination of oranges and vivid yellows, which I love Polychromos for all their bright, vivid yellows and oranges that are in the 120 piece set. And you can kind of tone it down if it's a little too bright. Blend between the yellows and the oranges. And then I even use the cream color, which is actually sort of, oops, I keep hitting my pencil's on the other side of the camera, so I keep hitting it. I use the cream color, this, and just kind of fill that cream in, because it's not really white, but it's a cream color in there. And then I can go back with my my darker oranges, those reds, detail those out. But I'm pretty much a fan of detail, so this kind of stuff is really enjoyable for me to sit and just kind of not really think and just create these little textures and shapes and
fruit all over it. That's like one of the most fun part for me. So I'm trying to pace myself with the shirt and not finish the whole thing first, because I get sad when my favorite parts are done and then I have nothing but grass left to do. So something to think about whenever you're creating, saving some of the best for last. But in reality, I'll be finishing up all of that and then working my way down. So that kind of has to be done. But the blouse part, the white fabric part, is actually the easiest part as far as it's so fast, because it's really, you're just lining, once you get the fruit in, you're just putting the really sheer light pieces of blues and lavenders, and when you see the sheer fabric, a little bit of the orange and the yellows from the underneath print, and then you're going back and doing the leaves and the lemons after. So I just kind of sketch in these kind of light, just kind of drawing them mostly as I go. And then doing this piece here, then I fill it in really lightly. And then I go back over it with like a lemony green. This is pretty forgiving and easy to do this part. So just kind of draw. Fill it real lightly. Looking closely at your reference photo or my reference photo. Filling it all in. So it's several layers to get the leaves all perfect. Using multiple greens and yellows. To keep it consistent with the rest of the piece, I'm using the same colors as I go through this process. And just to make sure it looks right. Got some olive greens in there for the darkness of the stems. The darkness of this part here. This is actually all the fun part as well, the blouse and this little detail. The grass, it's not the most enjoyable, but it's also not difficult. It's just a matter of doing it. But all of this is kind of exciting and fun, because as you do it, you start to see the pieces kind of come to life, and that's kind of exciting. You start to see the green leaves kind of come out. So that's kind of fun. But just keep going in and coloring it. But then the sheer fabric, well, once it's all done, and I know this is really dark. If you look at my, this is really bright. It's a lot darker than it is. If you look at my Facebook page, you can see it. This blue shows up a lot more. This blue Pablo pencil and the grays. So you have to kind of think about all of your tones and values. Just kind of make sure you get this sheer fabric to look blue. It's, for the most part, the fabric is light blue and gray mix, a mixture of light blue, gray, and some light violets, and every now and then a reflection of light magenta. This color is really what makes up the fabric. There are only little areas in between that are not that color, that are white. So once you lay that, it's a very light layer of those colors, but that's really what you're seeing. Your mind, you think you're seeing white, but white is never white. It's all the colors that you are picking up in the room or outside, or from the sun's making shadows on the fabric. So then you go back over it with the white, staying clear from the fruit because I don't want the fruit to be messed up. on that little piece of fabric right there, it's done. And then as I continue, I can use dark colors for the shadow, a little bit darker gray. You can use the darker cold grays for like along the edges of the next piece of fabric because it's really dark right along the edge where fabric meets fabric, like that. But not forgetting all of those reflected orange colors. Super light touch. Sometimes you get a little bit too heavy handed. It has to be like, you almost have to say to yourself, I'm not touching the paper with the pencil, but you are. And then it's light enough. Otherwise it'll be too dark. So then once that gets on there, a little bit of gray. That's what is causing it to look sheer, is that super light reflection of the color underneath. It's the same color as these lemons, but it's like you're seeing through the fabric and seeing the lemons underneath. And every now and then, because it's pencil and there's so much dark green and brown and hair and stuff, you're gonna see these little dots that bug me, and so I'll pick them up, go back over it with white. I don't want those little specks on there. But anyway, so that is how I create the white parts of the fabric. Just like that. It's a little bit hard. I don't know if you can see it. Hopefully you can see it. It's just, I can't draw without the light. I can't see what I'm doing and I would ruin the piece. So whenever I do a live stream, I've got the light on. And so even though it's not the best for you to see it in that bright of a light, because you actually see a lot more flaws and pencil marks and issues whenever it's all these. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 lights shining on it, so it's making it very bright and less vivid color than what I see in the room. Whenever I turn all these lights down or not directly on it, it looks very vivid and saturated. So what you're seeing is a little bit desaturated. All of the area looks whiter and brighter, where you might not be able to see the color that I'm laying down. So I'll have to watch this YouTube video back and see how realistic it is compared to what it really looks like. And you can go on my Facebook page and see my updates. I try to take photos to make it look realistic. I get the right lighting, and then I take the photos so that it looks like I see it in a room. So if you look on my Facebook page, you're going to see the most realistic color values and tones of the shirt. It's not white. It's really actually very gray and blue. The shirt is gray and blue. The paper even sometimes looks, with my pictures, when you take a photograph, the paper is the wrong color. It looks kind of reflecting the colors of the pencils. So it's one of the hardest things to do is take a photo of a piece of art that you've created. So it's really exciting whenever I get to display a piece and everybody gets to see it in person, because it looks so much better than it does on the screen, because you've got lights reflecting in the room and you're not seeing it like I'm seeing it. So it's kind of sad, but close as I can get. So I'm putting more orange here. So probably will work another 30-40 minutes literally on this area here, just because there's some tiny details that I like to capture. I get really close and quiet when I'm doing that. So just kind of roughing it out right now for you so you can see how it starts to come together as fruit. But then I'll go back in and really capture some of the detail in the shadows around the fruit too, because I'll be using some of the lavender pencil, some of that bluish pale to kind of come right up against the fruit and capture the reflections and line shadows and the seams in the fabric. So it takes a lot more than just this. This is just kind of basic, showing you how I lay it all out and get it started to look like fruit. But this is the fun part. So anyway, if you have questions, you can jump over to Facebook and ask questions, see if I can answer them for you as far as what I'm doing. But this is it. I'll be doing this for
many hours before her blouse is finally finished. And then back to the grass. Okay, well, thanks for watching. And for those of you who were asking, I hope you got to watch. Otherwise, you can watch the recorded version because I will upload this live stream as a recorded version. Thanks for watching. Let me take this off. See if I can show a little bit better. I don't know. I probably have to turn the light out. Okay, well, I'm going to get back to drawing. So thanks for watching.